Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Gas Police Stamus from GearWorks.com and the E2KG Network channel on YouTube, here with two very beautiful people. You guys look great, let me
I
say.
think it's I think it's just your camera. So
Hey, don't try to butter us up now.
So, the guys are giving me a good old fashioned good ribbon because we are running significantly late, about 30 minutes behind our normal targeted start time. I blame it on Thanos. Not a big deal. Uh, can you guys not see Funko Pop Thanos right
Nice.
uh,
there?
I didn't recognize him without his
nice.
helmet and armor and stuff.
It was a very weird Funko design, in my opinion. Um, but at any rate, we are here and we are back after E3. A week and a half that, to me, was a black hole of our existence as we dove deep on keeping up with everything that was E3 to, on my end, to the ignorance of anything else that was going on. And now I'm having to dig myself out of the hole that opened while I was doing that. So, same for you guys, DBQ? Prime?
Yeah, I'm finding some emails from last week that I probably should have responded to in my inbox that I think happened around some of the press conferences that I missed. Oops. But no, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that it feels a whole different pace to the week, right? When you're not frantically checking on a regular basis for updates and everything else. But I do have to say, it's good to be back. I wasn't, after a week of multiple podcasts, I was like, oh, but there's some energy here and there's lots to talk about. So I'm glad to be here, guys.
Yeah. So, Prime, why don't you start us off by
You know what I'm even more glad for is when people
mute their
have
mic?
their
Yes.
mic on. It's awesome. Although I was totally guilty of it last week, so
So it's a little rough. I have like three more windows open than we normally do now. So just a little inside baseball for the listeners out there. So we had some technical problems with one of our podcasts, our final E3 show of last week, and I have been thinking for a while about doing an alternate recording. We're trying that tonight, utilizing OBS, and we will see how that goes. But in the meantime, Prime, why don't you talk us through what you I didn't game at all during E3, so Prime, I'm suspecting that you were the same, and you finally got back to it this weekend after we came out of E3. So I'm wondering what you've been gaming on.
Yes. Well, we played Battlefront 2 this past weekend, so that was awesome. I had just bought it over, I don't remember, like Thursday, Friday or something. The big sale that they had going on. So I had a lot of fun with that. And no stream. We didn't stream, but it was just us playing, so that was cool. First couple games didn't know what was going on, but that was fine. It's very hectic. I don't remember it being like that on the first one. I don't know. I just thought it seemed a little bit more hectic than the first game. And then and that was on the Xbox One. And then playing The Crew, which is my game, my Let's Play game for this past like 3 weeks. I think now it's going to be. I'll talk about that more next week, and that's on the Xbox One, along with Rocket League. And I've actually been playing that on Xbox One and Switch. And then Fortnite on the Switch, since that came out, that dropped last week. That was a nice little bombshell there. Um, I was expecting it, kind of everybody was expecting it, but I don't think anybody was expecting it to be available for that week. So I've been playing that, and I'm just like my title says, I'm terrible at that game. I was talking with DB a little bit beforehand, and I don't know. It's just because it's only third person in Fortnite, unlike PUBG where you can switch back and forth between first and third. And I just can't get the hang of it yet. So hopefully, as I play and die, I'll be able to get a little better. So that's been my gaming experience. DB, it looks like you've been playing a lot of Paladins on different systems here.
I have, yeah. So again, another game that dropped last week. We knew that it was coming with Paladins on Switch, but I had probably Paladins itself launched out of beta back in mid-May, and so I had kind of repicked it up on Xbox and kind of dipping my toes into it here and there. But the announcement of it on the Switch got me excited. So I picked up the Founders Pack. It's $30, unlocks all the characters from now into perpetuity, and it controls great. It's pretty fluid. I've played it docked and undocked. Playing it undocked with a PlayStation or with a Pro controller is just like any other console. Playing it uh, 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 playing it undocked. It's a little harder to do with the Joy Cons, just in terms of I'm not used to it yet. But it runs smooth. Frame rate is locked at 60, and so it's great. I'm really enjoying it, and it fills a niche on the Switch that is not there currently. So yeah, I've been playing not only that, but a whole suite of high-res studios games. So, Paladin Strike, which is a mobile game on Android and iOS, it takes the Paladin's characters and throws them into kind of a MOBA, top-down touchscreen controls, which actually work really well in terms of abilities. And it's just like a MOBA or an RTS, right? You've got cooldown timers for certain abilities and a basic attack. But it kind of plays. The main mode is similar to what it is in Paladins in terms or RTS. Overwatch, right? You've got payload, right? You're hitting a control point and then trying to escort it to another point to win. So I've played that probably a good month consistently. Right, I was logging in on a daily basis, playing a couple games, ranked up to platinum. I think there's diamond above platinum in terms of rank. They just came out with a big patch today, which adjusts some of the crafting pieces and adds a battle pass. They've been adding characters. It's a really fun. Again, this is I enjoyed MOBAs, and so this fits in with that. And then my other high-res game is I did finally dip my toe in a battle royale game, gentlemen, and I played some Realm Royale, which is high-res is one. So the pitch here, I think, would be that if PUBG is for fans of shooters and and Fortnite is for fans of Minecraft, that Realm Royale is for fans of World of Warcraft. It fits into that kind of fantasy aspect. There's armor, and there's crafting abilities to be able to. There's specific skill sets. There's classes in terms of a warrior, engineer, and they have different cooldown timers as well. So we'll talk about actually those kind of tie in pretty well with our topic for this week in terms of. But before we get to that topic, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Gasicles, and what have you been playing? So you didn't play much during E3. What did you pick up over the weekend?
No, what I think is really funny though is it sounds like. It sounds like all of us did this super deep, I don't know, redemption dive into gaming at the end of E3, and I don't know how much of that was it really kind of shook us to our core at how involved E3 was going to be and how much it was going to consume us, or if we were veritably excited and pumped up from all the news out of E3. All of us tore off and played tons of games. I'm going to come back to probably in the post-show DD and understand. I thought Paladins was a battle royale game, so it caught me off guard a little bit when you said you played Paladins and then mentioned and I got into a battle royale game. So I got to understand that better. I also paid in for the Founders Pack, although I've not had a chance to play Paladins yet. I went and spent about 6 hours in Titanfall 2, chewing through a lot of this single-player campaign that I'd never finished. It's always super interesting. I also gave me the opportunity to test out a new gaming keypad that I had that I hadn't gotten around to testing, so that was pretty fun. I took the wheel and pedals and played some Dearth Complete Edition. Again, loads of fun because I love gaming on PC, but I hadn't done a lot of in the approach to the E3 show, and I love using my gaming peripherals. And this morning, I'm starting to turn the corner and get into Rome Total War, another one of those games, 2004 release, by the way, so we're winding the Wayback Machine. It's one of those games that I had. I did dive deep and play like one round of the Imperial campaign, but I never got back to it. I feel like I never got my full money's worth out of it. I just love the weird thing, and I think DB, you and I like this a lot. We love to gamify the game. And so I love the family tree management aspect of it, and like promoting people and demoting people, whether they're your firstborn or not. That's what I really kick out. So,
yeah, there's some great stories there, I bet, right? Some good headcanon. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that what you and I do just internalize and dream the life of being in that game, so to speak. And then we got together, DBQ and Swissguard and I, and played a little bit of Destiny 2, and then as Prime mentioned, he and I got together and played a little Star Wars Battlefront. So the topic for tonight is about taking the rose-tinted glasses off and talking a little bit about what might not be as rosy of a picture of the video games industry as we all probably had during E3 and shortly in the wake thereafter. Because in the run-up to E3, things were not as pretty, and we kind of put a pin in the corkboard for this topic and question ourselves as to whether or not it was still a valid thing. Because a lot of it, you kind of might watch E3 and feel like E3 cleared the decks of this, but it didn't necessarily. So, first up, we may not get through all these tonight, but first up is this overall topic of what I felt going into E3 was the dearth of games in 2018. We all talked about last year, and 2017 was a pretty bang-up year. I mean, we got Resident Evil 7 right off the bat at the beginning of the year, shortly followed up by Horizon Zero Dawn. We had a lot of these games that had been delayed for the holiday season that they rolled and stacked up in the spring. And one of the things in 2017 for me that was really encouraging is I feel like there are these 3-day weekend games that pop up. You get a game that drops before Memorial Day weekend, you get a game that drops before the 4th of July, and we saw a lot of that last year. This year, in the first half of the year, I've moved deep on Far Cry 5, and I think that's really about it. So am I off my rocker here, or do you guys feel that the first half, in particular 2018, is not measuring up to what 2017 was?
So I think for me, I mean, for my own personal gaming taste, no, it hasn't really, right? Because we had not only RE7, but we had Horizon and Zelda Breath of the Wild all within those first 3 months. This year we get Far Cry 5, God of War, which I think is huge, right? I mean, that was fastest seller on PlayStation 4, and then we also got Monster Hunter World. Maybe Dragon Ball Fighter Z. I guess if you're going to talk about what those big kind of first quarter games were, but then it also feels like once we hit after that first quarter or that fourth quarter fiscally.
I feel like the Dragon Ball Z, the Monster Hunter World, despite all the hoopla about how well that game sold, I feel like those appealed to a certain niche.
Yeah, I don't know that there's been. I mean, other than God of War, I don't know that there's been a game in the first half of this year that's made lasting ripples.
Yeah, I mean, some of the other games you have like Detroit, Become Human, Xbox side you had Sea of Thieves and State of Decay. Not really my cup of tea. Well, I mean, I don't have PS4, so I can't buy Detroit or God of War or anything like that. But I think this year was more, at least for me, it was more. I think there was a lot of games. Like you read all those games off, but there was just nothing that jumped out at me at least. Like I tried Sea of Thieves, it was good, but I mean that's a multiplayer game, and this is I guess something we're going to talk about here a little bit later. State of Decay once again, fairly that one I can't really say too much on because I only played like the very first like 15, 20 minutes maybe. But once again, it kind of starts out like single player type of game. You can kind of do it by yourself. But I know later on, from what I've read, it's really better to be in a group and be in this community basically. And it's really what it is. It's a community game because you gotta take care of your base. You gotta take care of your people, and you make these decisions like hey, I don't know if this guy's gonna work out for us. I'm just gonna kick him out and let him be on his zombie apocalypse by himself. So these big multiplayer games, and there's been single player games too. But like I said, there's just been nothing that like really jumped out at me. Far Cry maybe is probably about the only thing I would have maybe want to played, and I still haven't picked that up just because there's once again, I mean, even on the Switch, there's just like a glutton of games that are coming out, and unfortunately, a lot of them are just kind of almost like mobile games, I guess. I mean, they're kind of just kind of cheapy games. And I'm not saying they're not good or anything, but they're just like, I don't want to pay, even if it's only $2, $3, $4, $5, and it's like, I don't want to do that right now because I got all these other games that I still got on my backlog that I'm trying to work on. So I don't want to say the quality dropped, but I mean, I guess kind of overall, at least for me, at least. So I guess that's my take so far on this first half of the year.
So yeah, so I am right there with you, and that kind of leads us into part of the discussion that was had during E3, right? Which is going into E3. At least I was really, I don't know what the word is that I want to use. I was really downtrodden about what I felt like was this race in the industry for everybody to grab for this battle royale. To me, at the expense of other types of experiences. Now, I think what the media likes to talk a lot about. I used to agree with them that that these aren't inherently one-for-one trades, right? Just because somebody's doing X doesn't mean that Y is not getting done. However, I guess in my older years, maybe I'm putting that around to no, because the world is a planet of finite resources, right? If there are developers in the industry working on X, there is an opportunity cost, right? It's not necessarily one-for-one, but it, whether you go through multiple vertices to finally get back to that point of origin, there is an impact. When the entire industry becomes one where when you go in to make a pitch to an executive who holds the money and gives the green light for what gets developed, and all of those executives feel like a battle royale game is low risk, but letting somebody do something like, essentially sacrifice is high risk, then that has a ripple effect on the industry. And I feel like we saw that at E3 with franchises that heretofore had not been multiplayer now being multiplayer. Now that announcement by Bethesda didn't completely disappoint me in terms of what all that is going to be, but it's a thing. So, what are your guys' feeling about the industry chasing Battle Royale? And Prime, I don't want to point the finger at you, but you're a participant in a lot of. I guess I feel like you're a participant in a lot of these Battle Royale games. Are you happier about that, or are you a fan of Battle Royale, but you are also concerned about what it's doing to the industry?
Well, yeah, I'm definitely a fan. Obviously, I'm PUBG and now Fortnite's, top of my list. Pretty much going to be, on my, for my playlists, going from the past and then going forward. It's kind of interesting because I know, Swiss is not here, but he kind of had some comments when we were talking in Flock, and my comment kind of to that is, yeah, it's it's the media darling right now, and obviously you got Call of Duty, you got Battlefield that's gonna throw out
Mic off.
The battle royale modes in their game, and for Call of Duty, obviously that maybe that's kind of contributing because obviously they killed their single player experience in that game because they just didn't have time. Well, they said they weren't going to have time to do it, but they didn't exactly say it was because of Battle Royale. But I'm going to assume probably it was because they started focusing on that maybe a little bit more. I mean, it's kind of hard to say.
Their official claim is that there was never a plan for a single player campaign. That this was supposedly going to be an all multiplayer version. But
see now. Maybe that's what they say now, but I thought I had read reports that they said they just didn't have time to they actually were working on it and they didn't have time to polish it up and have it be the experience they wanted it to be, which kind of some people say, oh, maybe they'll throw it in as DLC later. That's a possibility. Who knows? But I mean, you just don't know. But I think it's just going to be a fad. To be honest with you, it'll last for a couple more years, maybe 3, 4, whatever. But I think it's kind of doom and gloom, but that's being cried out there. That's here goes the single player experience because everybody's focusing not just on battle royale, but just multiplayer. In general, all these Destiny likes now that that's a term I suppose that's being created. Obviously, we had the Division. Now the Division 2's coming out. You got Anthem, which seems like it's going to be kind of like Destiny. You get a group of people out there and. Maybe all these other people will be out there too that you can group up with. I mean, we don't know for sure how that's going to play out, but that's what it looks like. So, but I mean, you do have all these other experiences coming out, like I mentioned, Detroit and God of War. I mean, we had Kirby to a lesser extent. Kirby and Donkey Kong also came out this year. You have Zelda, and like you mentioned, Horizon coming out this past year. So. I don't know. I think it's just like I said. I think it's just going to be a fad that's going to hit for a little while, and then it's going to it'll come back out. And we'll get all these experiences again. And they've been kind of saying this too for the last even before Battle Royale for the last few years that
mic off,
multiplayer is taking over the world, and single player is going to die.
On.
But I think I think it's fine. And we have all these indie games that are coming out too that they give us these stories like Golf Story. I mean it's kind of It's not a huge AAA game, but at least it's something that's single player and stuff like that. So stuff that's coming out on Switch and even PlayStation and Xbox too. We get these smaller experiences that come out.
BBQ Hams, is he right, or is he puffing his own smoke?
That's because I like Battle Royale. I
More
don't want to go away.
counterpoint. Hold on. No, I'm hiding in a bush. Wait, I'm waiting till the end. No, so when we started talking about this topic before E3, I think I was along with a lot of other people of really expecting a lot of Battle Royale conversations on stages and on the floor of E3. And I don't feel like I saw that this year, right? I mean, not only did we not see what Call of Duty or Battlefield's Royale modes are going to look like, we didn't see a whole lot of. I don't feel like we saw a whole lot of copycats. We didn't see nearly as many people chasing it as I expected. And that could really, I mean, there could be lots of reasons for that, right? Like, it's also hard to get into, right? I mean, it's also an industry where they've gone through this cycle. I think what Prime was saying is very true, right? Everybody chased MMORPGs after World of Warcraft, trying to create something that replicated that success. Everybody chased MOBAs after League of Legends and Dota 2, right? I mean, and now where it is, I think about Turbine, right? I used to really enjoy playing Lord of the Rings online, and then they invested heavily into MOBAs with the DC MOBA, whatever it was called, Infinite Crisis or something, right? Which crashed their studio. There's, you know, as an industry of chasing fads, they're a lot more expensive to chase than a fidget spinner in terms of their production and their expenses. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to go away. I think, I still agree that it's probably going to end up being incorporated into another of other big name titles. It could in 5 years from now be just another mode in some of those games and not its own standalone game. But I think one of the factors here, and thinking about my own kind of digging around and listening to people play Realm Royale, right, as it's trying to break into this space, is how big of a player base does it need to be able to populate maps on a quick basis, right? So looking at Steam charts for the week here, and peak today, right? Battlegrounds is still over 1.2, almost 1.3 million people. Realm Royale peaks at 52,000. And at some point, if it drops too far down, how long do people have to wait? So I think the tail on how people will chase this is going to be a lot shorter, because it's not going to be a model that can be sustained without really big population bases. But I think the big test will be what Call of Duty does in terms of how can it sustain itself. So yeah, I think I was a lot more kind of concerned about this before E3, and not seeing that. I think E3, as you said, right, we put a pin in some of the worries of the industry, and everybody kind of celebrated what was going on, and we got a lot of big story driven games as well, right? We get Ghost of Tsushima and Cyberpunk, and we get a lot of games that don't necessarily seem like they're chasing fads, either on the indie end or on the big name end. But I'm going to say, before I kick it back over to you, Agasicles, that I agree that there's a cost to some of that, right? And for any developer, smaller developer, who's trying to chase that, I think that there's a real challenge there, especially if you're trying to take a bite out of Fortnite, when Epic can host a championship during E3 and give out multi-million dollars. That anybody who placed in the 50, they did a team, right, and anybody who placed, or not even placed but played, got $20,000, let alone the millions that were given to the top 3 teams that played. So when you've got big players like that who can throw the money around, I think it's harder for smaller companies and developers to kind of break into that space, because there's not a lot of margin for error, right? I mean, they can't be For Honor or Rainbow Six and have Ubisoft's multi-millions to keep kind of propping them up while they find a player base 2 years later. Prime, you still have your mic off. Are you chomping at the bit, ready to refute me here, or?
No, I was gonna say something, but I want to let I guess please go ahead and
Yeah, so
say his
we've
piece.
said our piece here. Where do you come down on this, Agassicles?
Well, you kind of covered everything, DB. I was about to flout you for not leaving us anything remaining in the agenda to go over. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I mean, where I am is, uh, my perception, my assessment is the market can only sustain two, right, of these breakout hits, and it's a repeat of the MOBA thing, right? Everybody chased it, um, but at the end of the day, it's only you're only going to support League of Legends and Dota, right? And you've got some second tier, third and fourth brand, and that's about it. Nothing else gains a big enough center of mass. And an article came out today that we some of us read or skimmed and kicked around in the flock chat, and that's Twitch, right? And that plays into that dynamic as well. My metaphor was, if I was an alien and came down to visit this planet and somebody stuck me in front of Twitch to tell me about video games, I would come away from it thinking that there were only 5 video games on the entire planet, right? Because Twitch only has and only surfaces to the top, those top 4 or 5 games, and anybody else who's live streaming anything to that is just noise. Um, and the battle royale scene, I think, is just replicating that business model. You're going to get PUBG and you're going to get Fortnite, and you're going to have 3 or 4 also rans, and anybody who tries to do anything, unless you dislodge one of those 4, you're just treading water. So it makes me, and if I were a game developer, I've mentioned this with Nintendo. I know I love Dave, but I didn't agree with him when he said in our flock chat that he felt that not showing the N64 Classic at E3 really hurt Nintendo. I was like, DB, when you and I went over their financials, I mean, we saw those consoles are just noise to them in terms of their total earnings. I and my own feeling as a software engineer, I'm imagining being at the company. Nobody who's trying to make their career wants to work on that device, right? When your compatriots are over working with some of the luminaries of the business creating the next Mario, nobody wants to work. No engineer wants to work on the SNES Classic. You're not making your career doing that. So, by the same token, I kind of don't really understand where some of these development shops are, where they're working on a battle royale. Like, I would be trying to figure out what's the thing that everybody else is not doing, and you got to strike that balance because you also don't want to make something that is um, so niche that nobody plays it, but you also don't want to go compete against the 800-pound whales, in the building that are sucking all the air out of the room. So I kind of don't get it. As you mentioned, we didn't see the deluge of battle royales that we thought we were going to see. On the PC Games Show stage, they showed 5 in an hour and a half presentation. I think there's more out there. I think if you go to Steam, you will see a lot more. It's just that I think they selectively chose to only show 5 in order to not present that perspective. And I think the big boys are all gearing up to bring theirs. They just weren't necessarily ready to show them all at E3. We got the Battlefront announcement. We know they're putting it in Call of Duty. I think we heard a couple other games that mentioned they were putting that type of mode in. But I think there's just going to be a big deluge this winter, and we'll just have to see how that goes. Prime, what are your thoughts?
So here's my thing. Before I get to even the Switch stuff, because that's kind of a separate thing, but the same, I guess.
Mic off.
Stuff. But as far as the Battle Royale, this is my prediction. When Battlefield and Call of Duty bring out their Battle Royale modes, and I'm gonna parallel this with Mom and Dad. You can figure out which one's the mom and who's the dad. But once they make it cool, everybody's just gonna be like, all right, we're done. We don't want to do this anymore because when Mom and Dad like it, nobody else likes it. So that's my prediction. But no, seriously, I think once Battlefield and Call of Duty get it out there, I think they'll put their own spin on it, especially Call of Duty because they have all the kill streaks and score streaks and little gadgets that you can use, and they're supposed to somehow incorporate all that into it. I think people are just gonna all right, I think we're pretty much done with this, and then it'll just be just like DB said, just kind of be pushed into a mode, in future games, and that's where it'll be. It'll always probably be there. I mean, it's a cool mode. It's something different than just regular deathmatch. Even though you kind of have the team sometimes in some of the modes, and even Fortnite, they're starting to throw like their seasons. They're starting to throw special modes in there, kind of like how you have just in regular multiplayer modes, like snipers only or rockets only or stuff like that. So they're even starting to do that in Fortnite. So I think eventually it'll just be rolled up into multiplayer, and we'll kind of be done with that part.
So your prediction is essentially that that EA, Dice, and who's doing Call of Duty? Is it Sledgehammer?
Treyarch.
And Treyarch and Activision are going to essentially Facebook Battle Royale.
Yep.
And then we'll all be sitting around waiting for the Snapchat of the video game industry in
That's
2019.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. That's my prediction.
Okay, now I'm ready for a counterpoint. Okay,
there we
so I'm gonna take my grumpy old man gamer hat off and look at it from two different perspectives. One is Epic. I think that Epic has demonstrated with Fortnite the nimbleness that does not exist at DICE or at Treyarch. The nimbleness that doesn't exist at bigger triple name studios that are dependent and beholden to a larger corporate structure. I think that they've demonstrated the ability to adapt and throw in those modes like you're talking about, Prime. And I think that if we see something take off in Call of Duty, like a kill streak, what's to stop Epic from making it a 2-week, part of season 6, right? Like, here's something new that they're going to add in, and it's only going to be for this season, so it's something new. And if it comes back, great. But to me, that they've demonstrated something that isn't, as a big Destiny fan, that certainly Bungie has not been capable of is pivoting when the market reacts or when your player base reacts. And I think the second point is, again, taking off. I'm gonna put my dad gamer hat on now, and I watch my kids who Fortnite is huge, right? And for them, Fortnite is, my son was interested to watch all the E3 stuff, but as soon as it was all done, he went back to playing Fortnite, right? I mean, the most exciting announcement of all the E3 announcements was that Fortnite is out today on Switch. And he's got 2 other platforms to play it on, because fortunately he doesn't play it on PlayStation 4, otherwise he'd be really stuck with his Epic account and all of that. But I think that there is a mindset there within a whole, 2 generations removed from us in terms of gamers, that potentially Fortnite could be a fad, but it also could be a new baseline. That it could be like the coming of age game that Call of Duty Modern Warfare was for a lot of other gamers a generation ago.
So part of your hypothesis really amazes me, because I did not expect in this episode to hear any of us propagate Swiss's theory, which is that what all of this could give rise back to is the mid game, right? The double A game. We've got triple A's. The counterculture to triple A's became indies. Indies kind of were hot for a moment, and then became, in my opinion, very pretentious. And we have started to see a reemergence of the middle game. I feel like what you're saying, DB, is you've got to have enough horsepower to be able to throw a punch, but you also can't be so big that you can't pivot quickly. So what you really want to be in order to compete in the battle royale space is you want to be a welterweight, right? You don't want to be so small that you can't do a lot, but you also don't want to be a big lumbering heavyweight and be stuck and it take you 3 months to turn the bow of the ship. That's a very interesting theory. So I commend you and Swiss for corroborating on that, however you did so behind the scenes to bring that to the show. But
yeah, I think we've seen that too coming out with. I mean, you have all those games like Wolfenstein, you got Metro, Exodus coming out, Just Cause. I mean, it's a big game, but I don't think it's a AAA big game. They're not going to put it up, in like September, November, October. with the big dogs, and so I think we started seeing that this past couple of years, and it looks like those middle games are starting to grow even more now.
So
Right, and I think
with
about it.
this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just because I'm thinking about that middle game, right? I'm thinking about my own games that I've played. I'm thinking about Realm Royale, right? Where this is high res, which is not a big studio, but they've got enough money behind it because of Smite and that success that they run their own esports tournaments. That they've every time that I log into that game, or at least even every time I launch Steam, that game is updating and changing. So that there's the ability to pivot there. And then I think about something like the also ran in the MOBA space is Heroes of the Storm, which I've really enjoyed over the last 3 years, as it's just turned three a couple weeks ago. But again, if it didn't have Blizzard money behind and I probably would have never found even the footing that it did, right? It's not a huge game, but it's been able to carve out a niche and keep moving. So I do wonder on where that kind of mid game is, but I also think that I'd hate to be a developer trying to target the mid game, right? Because landing that shot is it's a floating island in a Mario Golf game, right? To go back to Swiss, a language that he would understand, right? I mean, it is a really tough target to hit, is because you either you shoot that high or low, and you've bet your studio on something that is going to be a hard sell.
But I don't know. So I don't know that I line up with how we're talking about the game here. I feel like Just Cause 4 is a AAA game, and I feel like those games are fine outside the budget. Um,
Now, when you talk mid game, like I guess how do you find the mid game? Is it sales? Is it
no,
popularity?
to
Is it
me it would be budget. I mean, it's sort of a game that includes higher quality graphical artifacts that you typically see in an indie game. Although there are some indie developers who have done some amazing things with their SDKs, um, but and done by a team that's smaller than these like 2, 3, 4, 500 size teams. So it is. I mean, I mean, so I have things that I would use to quantify it, but I guess in terms of the effect or like the subjectivity or like knowing what it is when you see it, it's a game that is almost all but AAA in well no I so
Well, you mentioned it earlier,
so?
right? Hellblade Sasuna, right? I mean
right
the
that's
right that is it's a potentially, or it has been, a AAA studio, but it was an independent studio project, and so
right
it did not have the same resources behind it.
right
Okay, and why I was asking because DB had mentioned like he doesn't know how studios will target a mid tier game, but I don't know if they actually like when they're doing the games. I don't know if they're actually thinking that like, hey, when they go to think brainstorm up a game and stuff, it's like, you know what, I don't feel like doing a AAA game this time. Let's kind of bring it down a little bit and just do a mid tier game. I think they're always looking to do that big game, or maybe for like an indie studio, obviously they don't know. I mean, they're not gonna hit it big most of the time. So they're just like, all right, we're just gonna do what we got to do. So I don't know if these studios actually want to even think that way to say, hey, we're gonna do a mid tier game, and that's what we're gonna do.
so like for me Skull and Bones is a mid-tier game, right? Ubisoft is putting some verbiage behind that, but they're clearly not dedicating like hundreds of people to work on that, and I'm sure it doesn't have a movie a movie-sized budget behind it.
Like
It's a
100 million or something.
yeah, it's a passion project, I think, and there's a dedicated core of people working on it. But like, I don't I don't think Ubisoft expects that to sell like 5 to 8 million units, right? Um, so yeah, that's just kind of where I am on it. I don't know the size of the development team. I mean, do we know how big Cuphead was?
No, I don't. I'm pretty
Now
sure
without
it
some
was.
fact checking, yeah, but it was a relatively small team.
Yeah,
Right, but it got a lot of marketing behind it. It was a little higher graphical fidelity than you would expect from an indie studio. I mean, the hard part with defining the mid-tier game, the mid-level game, the AA game is it's a little all over the place, right? Like for instance, is No Man's Sky. Small development team, but that didn't feel to me like an indie project. in terms of what they were putting together and the size and scope of what they went after. Definitely doesn't feel like an indie project when we talk about what No Man's Sky Next looks like. I don't know. I guess my feeling is there's things at the top end that I don't feel slip down into the AA definition. I feel like those are still AAA games, but below that there's a wide swath of titles that those may fall into.
So let me ask a question related back to our topic then, is 'cause I think this is a natural swerve from our topic and it makes sense. So in the idea of sustaining or growing a player base in a community, how, regardless of how we decide what who hits that mark for a AAA game, right? So Skull and Bones, is it Ubisoft money that's going to allow it to kind of keep floating even if the player count is low, which then allows it to eventually find a footing after a couple patches, or it's not going to be a Boss Key Productions, right, where it's going to die and the studios bet the farm on it. So I do wonder in terms of whatever fad that the industry chases, and how much of that is battle royale or whatever comes next is how sustainable that is for development teams.
Well, I think as you mentioned, right, and you and I both talked about, I think it's a matter of the size of the publisher, right? In a lot of ways, these mid-tier games, I think, will be this is the sports team at the college that isn't the varsity football team, right? This is the Amazon Kindle, right? It's these things that get sustained and get kept around and have their own degree of popularity. But what funds them, what allows the publishers to do those things, are because they're pumping out an Assassin's Creed every year, right? It's Madden makes a ton of money, therefore EA can let DICE go and do some crazy one-off project, right? I don't know, Prime, any other thoughts?
No, because like my title says now, I'm terrible at computers, and I don't know what you guys are talking about. So I just came in. I did fact check Cuphead though, and it looked like it was just like a couple people working on that, at least initially. So a couple brothers.
All right. Okay. So that's gonna just about do it for our show this week. In addition to us starting late, we probably don't need to go on for an hour and a half after we just pretty much killed ourselves putting together the E3 coverage. Word of the Wild, we're going to be doing a schedule change, pretty significant schedule change in the month of July. We will shift our weekly format to where we will have shows Monday night and Tuesday night. So Monday night will actually become our news show, E2KG and 30, which will kind of be nice because we'll kind of come back and after wrapping around from the weekend and talk about the news of the previous week before the news cycle really gets started for the week that we are in. And then we'll drop that show. You will be all caught up. And then on Tuesday nights, we'll continue to do our discussion show, the show, in the standing format, alternating weeks with one show being a discussion show and the next week being a gamer experience show where we just talk about all the great games that we're playing, the backlog games, the new games, the indie games, the multiplayer games, the battle royales, Prime. And then also, we want to make sure that we remind you, please go to the channel, to the YouTube channel, and not only check out the episodic podcast, but also check out some of the gaming content that we're putting on there, the live streams, the game captures, Prime live streams to Mixer, prominently, and then pulls this stuff over to YouTube. I stream all over the place, but I'll periodically pull some of that stuff over to our YouTube channel as well, and I'm going to try, I think tonight, if I don't have equipment problems, and do a live stream of an old backlog game, like I mentioned at the in the intro of Rome Total War. So, Tim, anything further to add?
No, for coming off of 3 shows last week, I think we no surprise, we had plenty to talk about tonight. So good show, gentlemen. Thank you.
And I just want to say, as far as Fortnite on the Switch, I did play it docked and undocked, and I'm terrible at both. It doesn't matter if I'm using the Pro Controller or just the handheld Joy-Cons. So.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's the kind of honest correction that we have here on the
That's
ETK.
right.
It is not a fact check about a game. It is about our own ability to play that game.
Oh, you had mentioned how you had played both for Paladins, and then I remembered and I forgot I had. I'm bad. I just can't do it.
So when you're playing Fortnite, I mean that's a pretty busy game, and you're playing undocked. Do you have to just like sit with your face like right on the screen, or are you able to like sit back from it a ways, or how does that work ergonomically?
No, I mean, well, normally when I'm playing with the Switch, anyways, when I'm handheld, I'll have it like fairly close when I'm sitting on the couch. So, I mean, either way, I would have been playing like that anyways. So, but yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining in. Once again, this has been Agasically Stamus, Osiris Prime, and DBQ Hams. A tip of the cup to you, and join us next week. We will be right back here at our regularly scheduled time and place. Yeah, that schedule change will happen in July, after the 4th of July, actually, to be more specific. So, thanks again for joining in. That's going to do it for us. We